As I am browsing through the deepest, darkest depths of the internet, and by that I mean as deep as I can get without getting the freaking police officers to raid my house, I am starting to remember a little piece of wisdom. I forgot who said this, but this person said, "Nobody sane comments." And by comment, I mean leaving a comment in the comment section on the internet. Surely this sentence is an exaggeration and a little bit vague in that, but there is some truth to those words. People on the internet tend to be so incredibly toxic and so unbelievably dumb, they are the equivalent of spraying yourself with a pepper spray. I mean, sure, words cannot hurt you, sure, cyberbullying won't exist if you just close your computer and leave, but that doesn't mean that the comments themselves are nice and sunshine. It only means that there is a great way to solve the problem, and that is to ignore them entirely. I mean, once you find out that these mean words being said towards you on the internet didn't actually cause a meteor to drop near your city, or for you to actually die all of a sudden, then everything should be hunky-dory, right? But still, it's nice for us to examine the problem with comment sections. I'm pretty sure that all of us are in the agreement that comment sections are cancerous. But despite coming into disagreement, there are still people who chose to contribute into the cancerous mass, making them bigger and bigger and 1,000 times worse than it already is. It reminds me so much of elementary school, where we had to write essays about how we can contribute to the environment by throwing our garbage into the bin. But then we proceed not to do it due to laziness or many other factors that would certainly make you an upstanding moral citizen of the mirror universe. To me, a comment section on the internet is, in a lot of ways, just like a toilet. People are going to fill it with feces, piss, and diarrhea. But unfortunately, producing all of those three things is something that we just have to do as human beings. So unless you have a scat fetish, it's best to just flush them out. We unfortunately cannot ignore the dumping process entirely, because otherwise you would have some severe digestive issues. It's actually quite sad, because in theory, a comment section should have been a wonderful place. It should have been a medium for people to give in feedback towards certain things that happen in the video or article or whatever post that someone else left on the top. However, in practice, only 1% or 2%, very little of the comment sections on the internet are fair, legitimate criticisms being delivered in a nice and friendly tone, and the rest of it consists of people screeching over the OP or other people in the same comment section, making the comment section almost entirely pointless if you want to look at any sort of feedback. Come to think of it, I cannot recall the last time I left a comment in someone else's videos. I just put other people's videos in the background and take a glance on them in case something visually interesting happens. If the creator of the video or the OP said something really stupid like "PewDiePie is a racist Nazi," then I wouldn't take my time to respond to it in the comment section, because the creator certainly wouldn't notice. I would make a video about it, send an email, or engage with them directly in social media when they are frequent, in which case they would block me immediately, probably without the needs of even interacting with them at all, in which case I just subtweet them. And the thing is, while I criticize the nature of people in the comment section, I also called out people for disabling their comment sections before. We are being put in a rather weird position. On one hand, we are in the agreement that internet comments are cancerous. On the other hand, if we disable them, it shows cowardice and refusal to consider another perspective. But at the same time, feedbacks in comment sections are generally useless because it's populated by people who swears instead of legitimate criticisms. But at the same time, disabling them shows that you're not the sort of person who would consider any sort of viewpoint. I think we need a better medium to express ourselves. The internet comment section consists of nothing but a space for you to type in whatever letter you want, which can consist of every colorful insult that you can ever think of. And since comments merely consist of words, we don't really know for sure if the users actually mean the things that they say in there, or that they're just trolling. The best way for you to know this is if you talk to them directly and have a conversation with these people. I am confident that at least 100% of those cancerous commenters are way too afraid of showing themselves. But regardless of your contribution or lack thereof towards comment sections, we can at least recognize that no matter how nice and respectful you are always going to be surrounded by absolute morons. Which is why I consider making videos about responding to people in the comment sections to be about as useful as making a video pointing out that a public toilet smells awful. But then again, even some of the most painfully obvious things had to be explained to either the earliest of minds or the thickest of minds. Did you know that a school in the UK removes analog clocks entirely because the students don't know how to read them? No, I'm not making that up, that actually happened. And in the topic of explaining the painfully obvious, we get into this article. Academic urges actions on online comments. Well, human beings produce garbage. They produce waste. They need to dump them somewhere. And it just so happened that they dumped them on the internet. Fortunately, I'm not the sort of person who take my dumps in the comment section. A comment section is merely me taking the piss, which I mostly do on Twitter because people read them for some reason. A video, on the other hand, is me taking a big dump. It's the sort of dump that would happen right after I ate the entirety of Big Smoke's order, after I ate Big Smoke himself. I'm taking a dump in the site who hosts that comment section, and this video is nothing but a waste. It's a garbage product produced by a walking embodiment of a brown, smelly piece of dog poo, and you sad basement-dwelling virgins are here to watch it, because I am the most important person in your life. At this very second you listen to me and watch this video, nothing else matters for the next couple of minutes. It's just you, me, and my terrible voice. Now go back to playing video games, putting this video in the background, and ignore your responsibilities as I read another piece of garbage article.
Social media platforms need to take greater responsibility for combating antisocial comments, according to a new book by USC senior lecturer in journalism, Dr. Renee Barnes.
To me, a responsibility that a social media needs is to provide platforms for people to actually socialize and to block any sorts of illegal materials and content that goes against the terms of service. But unfortunately, no social media in existence has applied their terms of service consistently. Considering how cancerous social media in general can be, I think the best course of action is asking these multi-million corporations to actually abide by their rules. Or, and here we move on to more extreme solutions,
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
The book, Uncovering Online Commenting Culture, Trolls, Fanboys, and Lurkers, Dr. Barnes takes an in-depth look at why people leave inappropriate comments on news threads, forums, and social media platforms.
oh wow, an expert on this matter is going to provide her insight in why people leave mean comments on the internet? Is this associated by human nature and our desire of just dumping feces everywhere? Could this be related to the power of anonymity and the consequence-free nature of the internet, where you can type in and say whatever the hell you want?
The online world is where we socialize, it's where we find work, it's where we meet our partners, Dr. Barnes said, but there seems to be this overwhelming problem of infidelity and abuse online.
Forgive me for being a filthy foreigner, but my English vocabulary is severely limited, so I would like to know what you refer to as infidelity. The action or state of being unfaithful to a spouse or other sexual partner. That is an interesting definition because that implies that most people on the internet are married, in a relationship, or actually had sex, which is a very generous implication. Unbelief in a particular religion, especially Christianity, which is indeed very true because there are so many atheists on the internet, you can smell the filthy unwashed fedoras from their heads. Or wait, is it the other way around? And after looking at other dictionary definitions of infidelity, it only mostly goes into either being disloyalty towards religion or disloyalty towards a sexual partner. But I think it's safe to assume that what you refer to as infidelity means disloyalty in general, which is still very vague. What kind of disloyalty that you're talking about if we're putting in the context of internet interactions? Abuse, on the other hand, now I know what that means. I know that the internet has certainly been abused by a bunch of idiots, the same way I abused the medium of YouTube to take a massive dump, but at least I'm not on the verge of prostitution.
People just seem to shrug their shoulders about it and say, that's the internet, but I argue there's an awful lot we can do to make these spaces more inclusive.
I think we have to play the semantics game again. Inclusive means including or covering all the services, facilities, or items normally expected or required. But in the context of internet communities, inclusive means including or covering every individual who is involved on the internet, which is quite confusing because the internet is about as inclusive as you can get. Anyone in the world have the access to the internet. Unfortunately, while the internet is very inclusive to pretty much anyone who wants to use it, the online communities formed on the internet are certainly not, for various reasons after another. I don't expect a neo-Nazi group to be inclusive towards the Jews, for example. So this idea of making things more inclusive only sounds like people trying to insert themselves towards certain communities of which they have zero interest in the first place and is only there merely to police people.
Dr. Barnes, a journalist with more than 15 years experience, said online bad behavior needed to be understood as a social problem rather than just an internet problem. We need to start viewing these online spaces as real communities with a set of social norms, which will create similar expectations that we have in offline world, Dr. Barnes said.
Unfortunately, that is not an action that can be done, Doctor. It is impossible for even the savviest of internet users to perceive online interaction as they would perceive offline interaction. And even if you manage to convince one person to do that, you will certainly have a difficulty convincing not only the veterans of the internet dwellers, but also the new recruits. The only sorts of people who would suggest this incredibly naive idea are people who are not familiar with the internet culture whatsoever and don't understand how it works. The online world is so radically different to the offline world. Suggesting that you need to look at it in a different perspective is not a solution, it's just another way of ignoring it.
Anytime we see inappropriate behavior, we need to call it out. We should flag it with the person and the platform as well.
Flag the person and the platform? Are you the sorts of person who would sue the car manufacturer of the idiot who crashed it on you?
By knowing why people make these comments, not just labeling them as trolls, means we can start education earlier, Dr. Barnes said, but we need to start lobbying for this to be made mandatory.
Okay, Doctor, it's clear to me that you are very naive in approaching these situations. You're jumping yourself into uncharted territories, one that you desperately try to understand, but unfortunately you are way too clouded by your optimism and visions of a utopian internet where everyone can be peaceful and kind to each other. But at least you are correct in a sense that this is more of a societal issue. Human beings are social creatures, but they're not perfect social creatures. The internet just jacked the social aspects up to 11. In some ways, the internet can be seen as a really harsh but sometimes accurate representation of the real world. It is a metaverse containing the shadows of people's lives, manifesting themselves as online avatar. It is a world where you can either see the distortion of reality or maybe reality itself. What people do on the internet, what people say on the internet, it may not be true. It may just seems to be trolling. But when it isn't, when it's actually a brief representation of what they truly feel, that's when the internet shows its true nature. That's when you see the horror behind the curtain. And the horror behind the curtain is the internet is just like the sewage systems. It connects all of us, but it is pretty smelly as hell. There is no way to turn this massive sewage system into a beautiful garden with fragrant flowers and colorful butterflies. You can't exactly spray perfume in a septic tank where millions of people would just constantly dump on it every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year, every time.